Today, we're diving into the work of Edward Thorndike, a psychologist who totally changed how we think about learning. But as you'll see, his legacy is way more complicated than his famous experiments might suggest.
I mean, think about it. It's one of the most fundamental questions, right? Is learning a flash of genius, a sudden aha moment, or is it something a little more, well, mechanical and gradual?
You heard that right. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, our best answer came from a series of incredibly clever and now totally legendary experiments that involved some very, very determined cats. So let's get to know the man behind them. First off, it is really hard to overstate just how big a deal Thorndike was. He wasn't just some researcher. No, he was a true giant, a foundational figure who basically built the field of educational psychology from the ground up. And get this, a 2002 survey ranked him the 9th most cited psychologist of the entire 20th century. That puts him up there with names like Freud and Skinner. We're talking about ideas that didn't just stay in a lab, they went everywhere, shaping classrooms and psychological theory for decades. So what was the big idea? How did he get so influential? Well, it all goes back to his most famous work, the puzzle box experiments. You see, Thorndike was pretty skeptical of all those stories about animals having these sudden, human-like moments of brilliance. He wanted to get scientific about it. His big question was, is learning a thoughtful process, or is it just mechanical? And to figure it out, he built a simple but absolutely brilliant little device. So here's how it worked. He'd place a hungry cat inside a box that it could only get out of by doing one specific thing, like pulling a string or pushing a lever. The first time, the cat just goes wild, scratching, clawing, bumping into things, until, totally by accident, it hits the solution. But here's the cool part. Each time you put the cat back in, it got faster and faster at escaping. All those random, useless behaviors started to disappear, and the right move happened way quicker.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures his mindset. Thorndike wasn't trying to show off how smart cats are. He was actually doing the opposite. He wanted to study the slow, messy, trial-and-error process of learning by looking at what he cheekily called animals' stupidity. And it was from these simple observations, just watching cats trying to get out of boxes, that Thorndike came up with his most famous, most influential idea in all of psychology. He called it the law of effect. And honestly, it feels so intuitive to us today, but at the time, this was revolutionary. Put simply, when a behavior is followed by something good, we're more likely to do it again. And if it's followed by something annoying or bad, we're less likely to do it. The logic is so clean. The cat pulls the lever, that's the action. It gets a tasty piece of fish, that's a satisfying consequence. So the brain forges a stronger link between pulling the lever and getting food. Meanwhile, all those other useless behaviors like scratching the walls, they lead to nothing. So those connections get weaker and just fade away. In Thorndike's world, consequence is king. But he didn't stop there. He also came up with other principles, like the laws of use and disuse, which is basically just use it or lose it. Then there was the law of readiness, which says learning works best when you're actually motivated and ready to learn. I mean, a full cat isn't going to try very hard to get out of a box for food, right? So why does all this cat-in-a-box stuff matter? Well, because these ideas became the absolute bedrock for behaviorism, that school of thought that focuses only on what we can see and measure. And it completely changed education. That whole idea of positive reinforcement, rewarding good grades, breaking skills down into tiny steps, yep, you can trace a lot of that right back to Thorndike's puzzle boxes. Okay, but this is where the story takes a really sharp and frankly deeply uncomfortable pivot, because while his science of learning was brilliant, the way he applied these ideas to human society was profoundly troubling. Thorndike was a huge vocal supporter of eugenics, the completely discredited idea that you can improve humanity through selective breeding. In his own words, he argued it was the most certain and economical way to make society better. It's a view that today is overwhelmingly rejected as discriminatory and just plain dangerous. And his views on gender were just as disturbing. He was convinced that the differences between men and women weren't cultural, they were biological and innate. He went so far as to argue that women had a natural instinct for submission, a belief that, as you can imagine, just reinforced incredibly harmful stereotypes. So this leaves us with a really big problem. How do you square this? How do you reconcile the brilliant scientist who gave us so much with the man who championed such awful ideologies? This timeline really just lays it all out. For decades, he was celebrated. He was a pillar of the community, even president of the American Psychological Association. But then, in 2020, the very university he helped build, Columbia's Teachers College, voted to strip his name from a building. It was a powerful statement that his science could no longer be seen in isolation from his harmful social views.
And that's the tough, unavoidable truth of it all. Edward Thorndike was a pioneer. He gave us the law of effect, a concept we still use. He was also a man who promoted racist, sexist, and eugenicist ideas. The two sides aren't separate. They are completely intertwined parts of one person's legacy. Which leaves us with a really challenging question, and there's no easy answer. Can we, or should we, separate the work from the person? How do we remember historical figures like this? Grappling with that complexity, with both the light and the dark, is really the only way we can truly understand a figure like Edward Thorndike.